everyone, I'm Hsing-ay, pianist and artist ambassador based in New York City, and I am thrilled to be in conversation with Maestro Elliot of the Schumann Symphony Orchestra in Colorado. Hi, Elliot.
Hi, Hsing-ay. It's great to be with you again.
We welcome everyone to KaleidosNotes, a series of video shorts where we can explore the musical ideas behind our upcoming live concert on October 2nd in Colorado. And so this is one of our 5 layers of getting acquainted with you, our audience, through our launch period. And we have a lot more information at lawmansymphony.org and singaishu.com. So, Elliot, we're here to talk about the big finale of our concert, Robert Schumann's Symphony Number 4. And Schumann was such a great thinker, writer, critic. He was a champion and mentor to Brahms, and he was married to the great piano virtuoso Clara Wieck. And, well, let's talk about his range of emotions. It's just, he goes from darkness to elation and
There was a lot going on when he originally composed this piece in 1841. In 1840, he wrote, I think, over 120 songs. And then after sort of this year of the song, he and Clara, they got married and life was going really well. He decided, rather than writing just piano works or maybe voice and piano works, that he would begin composing a symphony. And he did. He wrote his first symphony, and it went exceptionally well. People loved it. In some ways, it's some of his happiest music. What's interesting is that when he finished that composition, he went right on to his second symphony. And that symphony was the symphony in D minor, which we now call Symphony Number 4. In some ways, sort of like Beethoven's Fifth and Sixth Symphony, which were written very closely to one another. These two works are also sort of the polar opposite of each other. The First Symphony is very happy of Schumann's. The Second Symphony has darkness, it has drama in it, and wound up not being quite as popular, and maybe for various reasons, including the fact that Mendelssohn was not the conductor who conducted it for the premiere, which Mendelssohn was for the First Symphony. So Clara felt that the orchestra, I believe the Leipzig Gewandhaus Orchestra, did not play quite to the standard that they did with the First Symphony. It didn't have the same conductor that it had for the First Symphony. And for that matter, Schumann himself actually thought, I really need to change some of this. It was 10 years later that he really revised the work and brought it into the form that most of us know it as today, the 1851 version of the D minor symphony. It seems as though he may have been bipolar. And the first episode of that happened actually in, I think it was 1833. And he died in an insane asylum. Only 5 years after he composed this, or after he revised this work, did he wind up succumbing to some of these illnesses that he suffered. That said, it also has lightness to it. It also has exceptionally beautiful melodies that transport us. And one of the biggest things that he did with this piece was he connected all of the movements together. They follow each other one right after the other. And in fact, there are themes from the very opening that you will find almost at the very end of the piece. And he links all these themes together. And in that sense, it's almost like you have characters in a novel. And there's a very organic kind of evolution to these characters. And that also helps with the drama. And so it's a different kind of piece than what he had been writing before. But at the same time, I think it's become as popular as it has become today because it does have that kind of dramatic narrative that grabs people.
yeah, he had such a unique spirit. I mean, there's this like youthful impatience, and like he was so open to exploration. And sometimes it may be difficult to interpret his music for an audience. I know that you and I were talking about some of the little details that you're using to maybe clarify the communication. Can you tell us about that?
Sometimes in Schumann's orchestral music, there are some particular sort of balance issues that occur when he has the whole orchestra marked forte, and then all of a sudden he'll have one instrument playing softly. And you have to wonder, did he really want that one note that also marks the harmonic change? Does he really want that one note to be inaudible? Or should you make that one note in some way audible so that it helps the listener and clarifies sort of what the harmony is? If something is not going to be made audible because it's blocked by an orchestra playing really loud, but there's two people that are playing, maybe if you add two extra people and mark the orchestra down just a little bit softer, and because you've added now four people playing that one, that one 16th note run, all of a sudden it becomes audible and it clarifies for the audience sort of what the musical intent was, and it keeps that line rather than um, we all struggle and we all say sort of, well, we didn't quite understand that bit, but that's okay, right? I think that to clarify it is helpful for the audience, and so there are spots where I've added 16th notes in the oboe section, or added some dynamics so that everyone understands that this is a very long crescendo, and if we make that long crescendo, we need to arrive at a mezzo piano here, and then a mezzo forte here, and then a forte here. So those are the kinds of things where I've been very particular with the orchestra, how I am kind of bringing this work forth to our audience.
That's fabulous. Yeah, that's great because I think that with every performance, there needs to be a really clear artistic vision. And then we try to figure out how to communicate the spirit of that vision. And I can't wait to hear your little changes and doublings.
Well, hopefully they will be, basically not noticeable, because we don't, the goal here is not to put our stamp on it, but rather to sort of bring forth and to clarify some of the musical intent. And of course, who am I to say, what the correct musical intent is? But I do think that having a real vision for the piece is important. And of course, we just hope and pray that our vision does service to the composer.
The audiences that I've talked to are always so shocked at how many decisions are involved in actually presenting a piece. Even after the score has been printed, there's so many little details that we have to make a decision on. And the important thing, as you're saying, is, respect the composer's wishes and try to start with what did the composer want? But then after that, there's still so much more work to be done before we can decide how we're going to communicate that.
In many ways, I struggle to make these kinds of decisions. And sometimes I don't call them decisions. Sometimes I call them choices. And sometimes the choices are sort of like you're choosing between vanilla ice cream and chocolate ice cream. They're both good choices, but you still have to choose. Mm-hmm. And so when I've struggled with making these kinds of decisions, but I think that when we know that we do have to choose something, otherwise it doesn't quite work. It doesn't have that intentionality behind it.
Absolutely. And I thought it was so interesting that Brahms paid out of his own pocket to publish the original so that we could see the comparison of what Schumann actually revised. Because, even the composer in his own lifetime, he made different choices at different times.
That's exactly right. One of the things, though, that now that we're talking about Brahms, that is such an interesting thing about this program that we're doing, because of course we're opening the program with Brahms's Academic Festival Overture. And a little bit earlier, I talked about how Brahms was not a student at the university, but he went and hung out at the university when he was 20 years old. And he was hanging out with his friend Joachim. And what's so interesting is that after he hung out at the university with Joachim actually wrote a note that Brahms took with him that he put in his pocket, and he went to the door of the Schumanns. He knocked on the door and he presented this note from Joachim. He was 20 years old. Brahms was 20 years old when he met the Schumanns. It's an amazing kind of coincidence how these life stories came together, and in some ways, of course, how the music of Brahms and Schumann are so complementary one to the other.
Well, good thing we have universities. for so many different layers.
Yes, for so many different layers.
Networking and expanding horizons, expanding community.
That's right.
Lastly, this is concert week, so join us this Saturday for a live concert with the Longmont Symphony Orchestra. And if you don't live in Colorado, then we will have videos of the concert available shortly after. So go on longmontsymphony.org to get a video membership. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.